The Miami Heat, currently in their 37th season and only missed the playoffs in 11 of them, have always been successful in the aspect of being competitive. From the days of Tim Hardaway and Alonzo Mourning to the early 2000s with D Wade, and finally with Miami Heatles in the early 2000s. But in the 2020s, they were blessed with one of the best anti-heroes in NBA history, and Jimmy Butler, who somehow, some way, led them to 2 NBA Finals and 3 Conference Finals appearances. However, despite all that success from his end, things with Jimmy Butler ended on a sour note, with him forcing his way out of Miami due to a contract dispute with another main character of this era and its entire history of the Miami Heat, Pat Riley, who some say is the main reason this Miami Heat era with Jimmy never went all the way due to his negligence in the trade market and free agency period that created a very much stagnant team throughout this 5-year period. So with Jimmy Butler being traded to the Warriors and them being back on the rise while the Heat struggled to get wins after the Jimmy Butler trade, let's travel back to the year of 2019 in its free agency period to the very beginning of this era and just see how Jimmy Butler did everything right, but Pat Riley failed him. With that being said, if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to like the video, as we are now officially on the road to 100,000 subscribers, so be sure to subscribe to be a part of that, and of course, to catch more videos. But as usual, this will be a long one, but you already know who it is. Roll it!
Before we go any further,
It's over, ladies and gentlemen.
So, let's set up the story. The Miami Heat have seen one of its best players of all time, LeBron James, leave their team in the summer of 2014 to bring his hometown team a championship, and most obviously the core of Chris Bosh and D Wade are getting older, and he's going on and getting out while he still can to go after another ring. So where does that leave the Heat? In mediocrity. Chris Bosh couldn't stay healthy and suffered from blood clots that prematurely ended his career. D Wade was a shell of himself and couldn't carry a team anymore, and also ended up leaving Miami a few years later due to contract disputes with Pat Riley. You'll hear that one a lot around here. And from there, it's a gap full of ups and downs. We see the ups with the likes of Hassan Whiteside and Goran Dragic turning to staples of the team, even seeing multiple playoff appearances from it, and the downs of drafting bad pieces in the aspect of Justice Winslow, who didn't turn into much, and being too good to compete for a top pick in the NBA draft. And also, for those that remember, the Celtics would have paid up to 5 or 6 first-round picks to get Justice, but the Heat didn't take that offer. One of the many blunders Pat Riley didn't take advantage of, but we'll hear about more of those again later in this video. But with a mediocre 2019 season for the Heat where they went 39-43, they were in a weird spot as a franchise. Not too many young players who will turn into much, and way too many older players who need to be kicked off the team. You can argue they are a few pieces away from being good in the East again, considering it's the Eastern Conference, where even with this core, they were a near 500 squad. But going into the 2019 offseason, is anyone even linked to come to their team? Well, the Miami Heat were about to be gifted a star for a cheap price that embodies everything that they stand for as an organization. July 6, 2019, the Miami Heat in a 4-team trade would deal away Hassan Whiteside, Josh Richardson, and a 2023 first-round pick out to receive back Myers Leonard for the Trailblazers and Jimmy Butler from the Philadelphia 76ers in a sign and trade deal. The career of Jimmy Butler is, of course, never without controversy. From his time in Chicago, then of course to Minnesota, where he forced his way out due to him not gelling with the duo of Cat and Andrew Wiggins that created some very viral moments, and of course most recently with the 76ers, where he gave the organization an ultimatum about either keeping him or Coach Brett Brown, who he didn't like either, and in turn they traded him away. The 30-year-old Butler is one of the best two-way players in the NBA, but his reputation has always followed him no matter where he went. At the end of the day, he's a winner and he wants to win, whether he is someone that has to play with someone better than him like he did in Philadelphia before, things fell apart, or now in Miami, where he owns his own team that holds his own values. I'm sure everybody's aware of the Heat culture, and of course, believe me, Jimmy Butler is the human embodiment of what they want in that. And with this new 4-year and $142 million deal, he is now designated as the star of the team and is now inheriting a very interesting roster to lead. From the young players players looking to get better in Bam Adebayo and the newly drafted Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn, to veterans still looking to win something in Goran Dragic, there are pieces to make this team competitive. But how does the NBA media think that the Miami Heat are going to do going into the 2020 NBA season? Well, they didn't consider the Jimmy Butler move to move the needle at all, as they were predicted to go 43-39, despite the fact that the East was at their weakest and not very well established at the time. But I can imagine why. This team is very much unestablished right now, with a lot of youth and experience alongside that, and of course, not with a lot of upside immediately. Sure, they can be good, but probably just not this season. But we've seen Jimmy Butler lead a team once as a main player, and well, he's going to try it again to the best of his abilities.
Butler goes right. Butler comes in. Out to Hero for three. Yes! With 7 seconds left. Tyler Hero puts Miami up by 3 seconds left. Butler for the tie. Yes! The Butler did it and gets it back. 11 seconds left. Down to 9. Dragic with a left. Got it! He got it! 113, 112. Down by 2. Oh, Butler knocked it away. Here's Hero with 8 seconds left for 3. Yes!
Your Miami Heat were one of the biggest surprises of the season, and Jimmy Butler was exactly the catalyst the Heat needed to catch fire once again as a franchise. With a 24-8 start to the 2020 season, the Miami Heat as a unit was absolutely legit and totally turned things around as a team compared to last year. And honestly, it's a complete team effort, and so many people deserve their flowers for this amazing start. From the very top, you have Eric Spoelstra, who is respected as one of the best basketball minds in the NBA world, getting the Heat to operate at a near top 10 ranking of both offensive and defensive rating, while also being one of the best shooting teams in the NBA. But of course, the man on the very top is going to receive most of the credit in Jimmy Butler, who came to this team as the nucleus of the offense, but also due to the depth of the team, doesn't even need to average a lot of points to get wins, averaging 19 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists a night. But again, the main thing you had to worry about was the depth of this team, where they owned 7 other players who scored 10 or more points. From the top to bottom, Goran Dragic is continuing things as usual for the team, serving as the secondary ball handler to Jimmy Butler, while also accepting a bench role for the betterment of the team, averaging 16 a night. Bam Adebayo, the 14th pick of the 2017 class, continuing to improve more and more year by year, and this year serving more like a hub of their offense, averaging a career-high 5 assists a night and of course 15 points per game, sporting a brand new mid-range jump shot, is becoming one of the best defenders in the NBA. Our next 2 players in Kendrick Nunn and Tyler Hero, both surprises in their own right, being rookies who immediately were given sizable roles and are producing greatly from it. And lastly, a very nice success story in Duncan Robinson, who worked his way up from the G League, was given a 2-way contract the year before, and now with his first ever standard deal is shooting the lights out, making the 3rd most threes in the NBA this year with 270. This team is something to be feared, and you truly never knew who was going to go off on a random night or how the whole team might end up being on a day-to-day basis. By December 8th, the Miami Heat, with their 24-8 record, were the 2nd seed in the East and were primed for a deep playoff run, competing with the Bucks and Celtics for the top seed in the East. However, as the season progressed, the Heat started to slip little by little. A 8-6 record in January wasn't too bad, but you can tell by their system it was starting to run out of steam, and with their February month going with a 6-7 record and slipping down to the 4th seed by the beginning of March, you can tell that they were struggling in some way. But even if they were struggling, there were still reasons to celebrate, as both Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo would be celebrated as all-stars, which is business as usual for Jimmy, but for Bam, this is a huge indicator that he has potential in this league, and if he can continue to make strides in this game, he can be a real feared center in the NBA for a long time, as he's only 22 years old this year. And it doesn't end there when it comes to stuff to be excited about, as the Heat were looking to make their team that much stronger by trading away James Johnson, Justice Winslow, and Dion Waiters to receive back depth in Solomon Hill, Jay Crowder, and Andre Iguodala. It was nice while it lasted for Justice, but he simply was just never able to find himself in the NBA despite his many chances to do so. But I will say, point guard Justice Winslow was a fun thing to watch at one time. Now they get veterans who know their role and who can add more defensive versatility to this team, but the main thing to think about, even with these changes, is this team even a finals threat when you compare them to the likes of Boston and Milwaukee? So as the season continues, you already know what I have to say. Blah, 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 COVID shut down the NBA, blah, 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 this changes everything for the season, blah, 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 playing in the Orlando bubble, blah, 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 Rudy Gobert is a funny-ass dude. Anyways, as the Miami Heat finish their seed play 3-5, they end their first season in the Jimmy Butler era as a 44-29 team, and due to their ending of the season, a lot of questions need to be answered. Was their start of the season just a fortunate hot streak, or was this the real deal? Can Jimmy Butler truly lead a team to the promised land, or will this just be a 2004 Pistons-esque postseason? And most importantly, will the Miami Heat be affected by the Orlando bubble weirdness? Well, due to this bad end of the season, the Miami Heat will start off their playoff journey as the 5th seed and facing off against a benefactor of the bubble so far in the Indiana Pacers with a surging TJ Warren, who is averaging a ridiculous 31 points in the bubble so far on godlike efficiency. Where were you when TJ Warren turned into basketball Jesus himself? I was stuck at home making YouTube videos. Anyways, before we start, some recognition for the team. Jimmy Butler, for his contributions leading this team, earned a spot on the All-NBA third team, making it the third time he has ever made an All-NBA team. And as for the signs of the future, Kendrick Nunn ends the season as the runner-up in the Rookie of the Year race against John Morant, however, with no first place votes. It was basically John Morant's win with zero competition, taking 99 of the 100 first place votes. But once again, going back to the playoffs, we are now in the NBA bubble playoffs where there is no home court advantage and everyone is on the same playing field for the most part. However, as we know, the bubble created many weird trends and performances we'd never see in the regular season with a crowd, so everything will become unpredictable. Speaking of which, in this upcoming series between the Indiana Pacers and the Miami Heat, we always have to check to see how the experts saw this series going, because obviously most of you know what's going to happen here. And it was for the Miami Heat to go across the board and sweep them. 17-0 tally, with most seeing it going up to 6 games at the most. With the explosion of TJ Warren, the confidence remains with the Heat, and I don't blame them at all, considering this is an Eric Spoelstra team we were talking about here, who is always going to be competitive no matter what. The first 2 games were dominated by the Miami Heat in this series, as the main goal was to suffocate the Pacers as best as they could and kill them with their depth. Game 1 seen the Pacers turn over the ball 15 times and see Jimmy Butler have a two-way masterclass of a game with 28 points, 4 steals, and 2 blocks as the Heat win by 12. And Game 2 was even worse as the Pacers turned over the ball 17 times this time and harassed the former All-Star Victor Oladipo for 5 of 14 shooting and 6 turnovers alone for another 109-100 victory for the 2-0 series lead. It's obvious that the defense of the Heat is disturbing the Pacers to a high degree, as the duo of Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo are holding things down big time. Game 3 even showed more that the Heat can catch fire when they wanted to, with a halftime lead of 74-56 due to Goran Dragic dropping 18 first half points and rookie Tyler Hero dropping 13 off the bench, and they carried us all the way home with a 3-0 series lead, winning 124-115, and the series is now officially on the line for the Pacers, and the Heat shut them down one last time for 87 points, and with 3 of those points coming off the bench. But once again, the Heat control most of the game, and the contributions across the board of the team, with Tyler Hero once again starring off the bench with 16 points, Goran Dragic getting another 20 piece, and even Bam Adebayo grabbing 6 offensive boards, which made this series sweep happen, where the Pacers didn't stand a chance for almost the entire series. And while the experts at ESPN see this coming, getting dismantled in a sweep isn't what most people expected at all. So with this series done, the confidence in the Heat has to be at an all-time high despite their end of the season, because you just never know how a team can come together in the playoffs. But their first real legitimate test can start now, as their second round matchup is against the best team in the NBA records-wise, the 56-17 Milwaukee Bucks. The team who owns the best defense in the NBA, the fastest pace in the league, first in points per game, and of course is home to the 2020 MVP and DPOY Giannis Antetokounmpo. Anyone who is anyone sees the Bucks as the clear favorite coming out of the East with an impeccable system headlined by Mike Budenholzer, and their mix of shooting and defense is very hard to work around that, especially if you don't have anyone physically able to handle the Greek god himself. But the Heat themselves have a top-tier defense and a willing defender in Jimmy and Bam, ready to at least try to slow down the first-time MVP. The experts, however, showed a different picture for this series, as they seen this series go either way, with an 11-7 tally going to the Bucks. But fun fact, in the regular season, the Heat actually beat the Bucks 2 out of 3 times, and it was because of one reason. They had the tools to shut down the MVP, with Bam being able to handle him one-on-one due to his versatility and athleticism, and Jimmy was pesky enough to get under his skin. Add in a double team here and there, and you have a system ready for the Greek freak. Obviously though, the playoffs are all about game planning, showing up in big moments, so anything can happen from here. Game 1 would see exactly what people expected though. Giannis, being harassed all game, was barely able to get the ball without a pesky defender in front of him or getting fouled. And even when he did get fouled, he went 4 of 12 from the free throw line and looked like a mortal for once. However, it wasn't easy to get the win. Chris Middleton and Brook Lopez made up for his offensive struggles with 40 first half points and leading the game 63-30 in an offensive barrage from both squads. However, the second half is finally where we get to meet the NBA legend himself, playoff Jimmy Butler. With only 13 points in the first half, he was already on a good path to have a good game, but in the second half is where he and the Heat turned things up both offensively and defensively. In the third quarter, Jimmy Butler would go perfect from all over for 13 points to take a 6-point lead going into the fourth, but he'd do even more, scoring 15 points in the fourth quarter and taking over the final frame to squeak out the 115-104 win, scoring 40 points in this first game of the series. Despite Giannis' slow game, he has other weapons around the team he can contribute. Again, one of the top offenses in the NBA we're talking about here, but it starts from the top, dismantling Giannis, and if they can do that all series, it'll only make this that much easier. Game 2 though would be completely different. Both teams were on fire all game, but the Bucks would always see themselves behind the whole game to the knockdown shooting of the Heat. The shooting was so good from the team that Jimmy Butler barely had to do anything, as it was headlined by Goran Dragic, but as the game continued at the same pace, the fourth quarter would finally see the Bucks crack through this deficit at the beginning of the final frame. However, the Heat would wake back up and force an 8-point lead with 3 minutes left, but the Bucks weren't going down without a fight. 5 straight points from Giannis in a 30-second span, bringing the game back down to 4, and after another minute of play, the game is finally at a manageable spot with a 2-point game with 8 seconds left due to a turnover from Jimmy Butler and a Brook Lopez layup. To some, this is a done deal. You make 2 free throws and the game is basically over. But as Jimmy Butler gets fouled and misses the first free throw, the Bucks are now motivated to either get a tie or go for another quick bucket off the timeout. And once Jimmy makes the second, the ball is in the Bucks court. With an inbound pass from George Hill to Kyle Korver and then passing it to Chris Middleton, the idea is clear. They want to tie game. But in the most unfortunate circumstance, Goran Dragic was going for a clear contest with his hand straight up, but as he shuffles his feet so slightly, it was enough to get called for a foul, and even after review, it is still 3 free throws for Chris Middleton to tie the game, and he does just that. So now the Heat are back in control. Either it's overtime or a game winner. Who will control this game? Well, you already know who it's going to be, even if he hasn't done all that much in game 2 so far.
Off the upper body, moved it up. All right, 4.3. Miami inbounds. Here's Butler with 3. Butler with 2. With 1. Butler against Matthews, gets it away, and no good. Do we have a foul? We do. A foul is called, and Jimmy Butler can win it at the line.
If the last foul from Goran was controversial, then this next one was, as Giannis tried to come in for extra security, but he made a fatal mistake getting in Jimmy's landing space and not trusting Wesley Matthews. And once the foul was committed, Jimmy Butler already knew what he had to do. He makes both free throws, and this game 2 thriller is over with one of the weirdest endings of the season. And the momentum of that win followed them into the next game as Giannis got shut down for 7 of 21 from the field, and the Heat winning once again 115-100 in an all-time collapse, allowing the Heat to score 40 points and only scoring 13 themselves in the final frame. And again, seeing the appearance from playoff Jimmy Butler scoring 17 fourth quarter points. By how things look, it might not just be the Bucks' time to be in the limelight yet, and it's showing here in this series with a 3-0 deficit. And now the Heat are about to reap the rewards of that fact. Even though they did lose Game 5 in a close game, the Bucks showed themselves to still be a year away or so, and now with a 3-1 series lead, the Heat are still not concerned. With 6 players scoring over double figures and an 8-25 game from Chris Middleton, for the first time since 2013, the Miami Heat have made it to the conference finals. Even if you don't respect this team talent-wise, you have a lot to love from the coaching, personnel, and especially their execution. And taking down and limiting the MVP and the best team in the NBA gotta mean something if they're going to reach the finals for the first time since, of course, LeBron James left. But once again, they take down the best. Now they have to do it once more against the Boston Celtics, who themselves are top 5 in offense and defense and own 3 20-point-per-game scores. Some can argue this might be a tougher matchup than the Bucks, with so many people who can create their own bucket and 2 budding stars in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and of course Kemba Walker, their newly added signing. But if they can shock the world once, they can do it again against the Celtics, who you could argue are pretty comparable to the Bucks and might just be a few years away from being contenders. However, when it comes to the experts at ESPN, it is a straight up 50-50 down the board from the experts. No one knows how this series will go down, and because of that, you already know we're going to be in for a good one. Almost immediately, we see how competitive this series will become because both sides have so many ways to get you offensively, and barely anyone can miss to start this series. 13 lead changes, and the Boston Celtics controlling most of the game due to the young star and Jason Tatum leading the way, and Marcus Smart splashing 3 after 3, and coming into the fourth quarter down 12, the Heat had a lot of ground to make up to win this game. Just like clockwork though, the Heat would slowly chip into this deficit, and once again, Jimmy Butler wanted to end the game to take the 1-0 series lead.
Dragic on the drive. Butler 3 on the way. Got it, Jimmy Buckets. Splash down. And the Heat take a 1-point lead.
Jimmy Butler once again comes through to take the Heat over the edge with a timely and very uncoordinated 3-pointer in the corner to complete the comeback, and continues to build his legacy as a clutch playoff performer. But with an ill-advised foul from Derrick Jones Jr. and a free throw from Jason Tatum, we have overtime. That superhero effort that he did was scratched away as soon as he did it, and the game is forced to continue. But the Heat still escaped an OT as Jason Tatum missed all 4 of his shots, winning 117-114, and of course, Bam Adebayo making sure that there wouldn't be a second overtime.
Clock at 7. Working against Butler. Got downhill. Couldn't punch it. Bam says, get it out of here. Adebayo sky high with the block and rejection.
But as the series progresses, the drama continues game by game. Game 2 seen 13 lead changes and 8 ties, but the main stat of the night was 20 turnovers from the Celtics and 15 third quarter points from Bam Adebayo that set up Miami winning the game 106-101 as the Heat keep the momentum all the way, especially as Goran Dragic and Jimmy Butler finish things off in the clutch. Game 3 though seen the Celtics truly turn it up offensively, with 4 players scoring 20 points or more, leading the entire game from the very beginning as the Celtics finally get themselves on the board with the win. But Game 4 was taken by the Heat to take a 3-1 series lead as Tyler Hero once again stars in the fourth quarter, scoring 17 of his total 37 points in the game, making this case for to be a cornerstone of this team in the future and truly being the X factor of the squad. It doesn't matter what teams do, the clutch Heat always find situations to win these games, whether it's doing something ridiculous from Jimmy Butler, defensively locking down a star, or in a case like this, a very unlikely hero. No pun intended. And with this 3-1 series lead, the Heat basically can stamp themselves for the NBA Finals. However, they have to finish their food first because the Celtics gave them all that they could in Game 5, blowing them out 121-108. But in Game 6, the Heat did let the Celtics hit their lick, and in Game 7 is not allowed to happen. Bam Adebayo 32 points, Jimmy Butler 22 points, 19 points from Tyler Hero, and 3 other players over double digits to give the Heat a 125-113 win in their most efficient offensive performance of the season so far. And with this 6-game series over, your Miami Heat have made it to the NBA Finals in the first season of the Jimmy Butler era, with a team full of young players who can grow and even more room to add in more pieces to make this team better in the future. If the Heat can somehow pull off this final series win, then Jimmy Butler will be considered one of the best signings in NBA history, and the Heat will be a big-time free agency destination for a long time, as long long as he's there. But before that, they do have to win it first. And it will be no easy feat going against LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and the Los Angeles Lakers. While this Jimmy Butler Heat team was just created, the AD and LeBron duo was also in their first year, except things are going way better for the Lakers, owning 2 top 5 players, a top 3 defense, and have been bulldozing the Western Conference playoffs so far. But the Heat have shown up at every stop and made a way to limit their stars and shine offensively, but this opponent will be so much different. This is LeBron James and Anthony Davis, their hardest matchup yet, and game 1 immediately starts in disaster with injuries to both Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic mid-game, which tears down the Heat offensively and defensively, and the immediate results show it itself. AD dominates for 34 points due to the lack of Bam's presence on defense, and Goran Dragic offensive presence was missed by the Heat as they only scored 98 points and lost by 18. And the entire playoffs so far, they've been healthy and have consistency with their team. But in the final stage of the season, Erik Spoelstra now needs to figure out how to go against the best team in the league with 2 of their most impactful players out with injury. Game 2 was unfortunately the same story without Bam and Goran with the same issues. 65 points combined from AD and LeBron, and a lot of points in the paint taking advantage of Kelly Olynyk and Myers Leonard, and now they're down 2-0. The Heat need a hero, and I do not mean Tyler Hero. He's too young for this moment. The Heat need someone to step up, whether offensively or defensively, to take down this juggernaut, because it's safe to assume even if Bam and Goran come back, they won't be 100%, and the series is in jeopardy of going away from them fast. So who will step up for this occasion? You already know who it is.
13 assists, a career high for him in game 2. Then with a steal down the other end, they throw it ahead to Butler, and Butler throws it down to Butler. Butler to the basket. Couple of fakes. Backs away, nails it. James guarding Butler, got caught on the Olynyk screen and banks it home. Butler the drive, the runner, he banks it in. Oh, what a masterpiece from Jimmy Butler.
We all remember this game. The game where people swore that Jimmy Butler was Michael Jordan's long-lost son. A 40-point triple-double with 2 steals and 2 blocks to pull off the impossible Game 3 win, 115-104, while also getting LeBron and AD to combine for 13 turnovers. However, the unfortunate truth is this is only one measly game. Can he continue to do this for the rest of the series, or will he eventually burn out from the carry job he might have to pull off to even stay in the series? Bam Adebayo did return back to the series for Game 4. However, AD and LeBron got back to business and combined for 50 points to win once again and take the infamous 3-1 series lead to seal the series to their advantage. And there is one thing about LeBron, he doesn't blow leads. Yes, Jimmy Butler did give us one more triple-double to a masterclass, and he even gave us one of the best memes during quarantine, but a Game 6 blowout that had the 4th quarter going in 87-58, the series was officially over. The Los Angeles Lakers win the championship, but luckily for the Heat, some fans didn't consider it valid. But even then, you still end up as the loser. But listen here, in the first season of the Jimmy Butler era, you literally made the NBA Finals. Do you know what that means for the future of this team? The Miami Heat is in place to be in the championship conversation year after year and should be treated as a high-end destination for NBA players. Jimmy Butler has shown that he can lead a team despite the lack of high-end talent around him, and they even have a top coach in Erik Spoelstra and even more promising talent in Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero, who is a rookie. If the Heat play their cards right and make a few moves, the Heat can be back in the driver's seat like they were when they owned LeBron James, especially in the Eastern Conference that isn't well established at the moment. This is the perfect time for the Heat to strike gold and take over the East and make another finals run. However, as the curtains close on this very weird season, the Miami Heat will have to come to the reality that their off-season is only 71 days. 71 days of that will be soon interrupted by having to come back to training camp and return to another long, grueling season. Despite what they did in the bubble, their reward for it might not be very worth having, but maybe if they can play their cards right and make some changes to this roster, some of that incoming pain can be alleviated. The Miami Heat somehow, someway made it to the NBA Finals in the first year of Jimmy Butler arriving on the team. But this team can still be better. Who knows, there was a lot of expectations for something super immediate to happen as soon as they got him, but the fact that they made it to the finals in the first season means that it should be officially time to invest in a championship core in some way. However, with a record low 71 days of an offseason, something would have to be done quickly with only 2 months and some change of rest, and the season soon coming back. So what did Pat Riley and the Miami Heat do to buy in and complete the arms race against the Eastern Conference? Well, they continue to build upon what they already had. Goran Dragic would return back with a 1-year, $18 million deal with a team option attached to it. Myers Leonard returned back to a 1-year, $9 million deal, and they would give 2 smaller deals to the likes of NBA veteran Avery Bradley, a 3-and-D guard, and another to Maurice Harkless to play a similar defensive role. There are pros and cons to this quiet summer. For one, the Heat have a lot of money saved up for this upcoming summer. If they lay off Goran Dragic's deal, they don't get what they expect, but at the same time, there is no real improvement to this team overall. Sure, the Heat made it to the finals, but you can still argue that there are other teams who look better roster-wise and might be able to out-talent the Heat in the playoffs. And as we all remember, the Nets finally have KD and Kyrie back healthy for a whole season. The Bucks now have Drew Holiday as an upgrade to he got muscles for no reason, Eric Bledsoe, and the same could be said for the 76ers, who got much better depth-wise. Their system can only go so far unless Jimmy Butler wants to go God mode more often, but the Heat may have other problems coming their way. But as we quickly come into the 2021 NBA season with barely any rest to speak of, how does the NBA world view the Heat after an entire finals run? Well, ESPN gave them the credit this time around, however, not as the #1 team with a 44-28 record prediction. And as you'd imagine, no one knows what to expect from this team. Quote, the Miami Heat have brought back almost the same team that stormed through the NBA's bubble at the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando, Florida, and won 2 games against the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Finals, despite Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic being hobbled by injuries for basically the entire series. Was that a flash in the pan or a rebirth? Well, the Miami Heat are going to have to prove their worth once again, being doubted due to their non-sexy way of playing basketball, and on top of that, not owning a top player in the league. But as the 2021 NBA season began, you can easily see the Miami Heat were not as lethal as they were last season. Jimmy Butler will be forced not to play due to health and safety protocols for 10 whole games. Tyler Hero was suffering from neck spasm and also got hit with the same health and safety protocol notice. And overall, the team was breaking apart month by month. Now, it could be worse. The Heat were still 18-18 by the All-Star break and were holding on to the 6th seed. But with the mix of injuries, COVID stuff, a slight drop off in offensive efficiency, and most importantly, the lack of a real break in the offseason, the Heat were running on fumes all year for the most part. Jimmy Butler would make another All-Star appearance though, as this time around he was forced to do more for his team, averaging 21 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and a league-high 2.1 steals a night. Unlike last year where the Heat were one of the best offensive teams in the NBA, being the Eastern Conference version of the Spurs, this year they looked below average offensively and were heavily relying on their defense being top 5 in opponents' points per game, but bottom 5 in regular team points per game. A very interesting way to win games and also very stressful. With this in mind, there are some clear changes that could be made around the team to make themselves even more dangerous, and Pat Riley can utilize that open cap space they have to make a decent move for the future of this team. And well, a lot of people would be hyped about the initial future of this team with one particular move. The Miami Heat would trade away Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, and a 2022 second-round pick to the Houston Rockets for the former NBA All-Star Victor Oladipo. Victor Oladipo's last couple of seasons have been filled with injuries and a steady decline due to it, and after his injury-riddled season in 2019 and again in 2020, his time with the Pacers were numbered as they look fine in the Eastern Conference without him, so they traded him to Houston, and then Houston didn't want to deal with him because he would soon have to be paid, so they dealt him to Miami in a very low-risk move that happened on the side of the Heat. This is certainly a move Pat Riley would be all about, so it was bound to happen as the assets dealt away would it be missed, and the upside for Oladipo can be massive if he stays healthy. But guess what? What if I told you that this move for the Heat had absolute hype built all around it from the media?
Here's what I want to tell you, Jacoby. Kevin Durant hasn't played basketball in a long time.
Been a long time.
Giannis has looked terrific for the Bucks. The Celtics still trying to figure it out on the interior. and the Sixers didn't go get Kyle Lowry. What yesterday told me is that the Miami Heat are my favorite to not win the East.
Whoa! Whoa! The Miami Heat are your favorite to win the Eastern Conference above the Nets, above the Bucks, above the Sixers.
Yes, sir. And here's why. They didn't have to give up Tyler Hero, who was terrific in last night's game, or Duncan Robinson, who we know is one of the best catch and shoot players in the league. They're getting healthy. You see how they played with Jimmy and Bam. They added Ariza for defense and tenacity. And then you add Victor Oladipo in the final year of his contract? You don't think he gonna be motivated to ball on a playoff team and be the difference against those squads we just talked about after the work he put in the Eastern Conference as a member of the Pacers? If I see KD back playing like Iceberg Slim and shooting trades from the suburbs, talk to me then. But
All right,
right
you're gonna
now,
change your mind. You're gonna change your
But for
mind.
right now-
I guarantee you're gonna walk this one back.
Miami Vice, baby.
Should the East Big Three worry about Miami?
Yeah, absolutely. Miami, it's a big four now. Let's be honest. Miami underachieved early. We knew that, regression to the mean. It doesn't always mean you go backwards. It means you go back to what you expect. That's what's good. That was happening with Miami anyway before the trade. But you know what this is like? It's like a Space Jam. They don't have a Jordan on that team. The other teams in the East have, oh my God, look at that guy, right? Look at Giannis. Look at Embiid. Look at KD and Harden and Kyrie, right? There's no one like that on the Heat. Apologies to Jimmy Butler. But they got the Monstars, a version of that. They got a whole bunch of guys who are really good, who can go get their own shot, who can hit it from the outside, as Stephen A. would say, who are rough riders. Think about how many different guys can come at you at the Heat. And I'm not even talking about like Bam, right? I'm talking about ball handlers who can shoot, create for others, score themselves, create their own shot under pressure. Obviously, Jimmy Butler, and we saw in the playoffs last year, Tyler Hero. You add Oladipo to that mix. I mean, those three would be enough to be like, ooh. But you also still have Dragic, and you still have Kendrick Nunn. You have 5-6 dudes. And I didn't mention Iguodala because he's old and he's not that kind of player, but he's still a valuable piece. You have 5-6 dudes coming at you in Miami that way. There is no KD. There is no Harden on that team. There's no Giannis. But you got a whole bunch of guys who can really play. They're going to be a problem, and I would not call the East a big three anymore. I'd say it's a big four.
And when you add on the other moves the Heat made by getting Nemanja Bjelica and Trevor Ariza for more low-tier assets, the Miami Heat might just be back in some way, and the media might just be onto something. That was until the concerns of the Rockets and Pacers came to fruition, and the Heat lost out on their investment only 4 games in.
Haven't swept the Lakers in a regular season since the 14-15 season, and that's an exclamation point from Oladipo, who's grabbing at his knee, and Oladipo is on his way out. Ouch.
And you're a little surprised because he had such a clear lane, but he kind of stumbles right there, and you see how he comes down and he feels it while he's in the air. And if you're a Heat fan, you're just making sure you're sending some well wishes as he walks.
The dream is immediately dead, and the Heat have to come back to reality. With the Victor Oladipo risk going up in flames, them missing out on the LaMarcus Aldridge sweepstakes, if you remember that, the Heat were forced to accept the reality that they were behind in the arms race, and their team just wasn't there due to that. And for extra measures to show how behind they were, the Nets even got better, getting James Harden to join their team via trade, while the Heat's best move was a declining Victor Oladipo. Despite that disaster, the Heat were still pretty decent after the All-Star break, but probably not going to be anything too threatening come playoff time. And due to the status of the Eastern Conference that year, their final record of 40-32 was good for the 6th seed. And what's even crazier is the fact that the next best team was 36-36. So what can we make from this? I mean, the Heat were still going to at least try to make some noise last year that was able to put together an entire finals run. But just like last year, they were going to have to prove their worth once again. So in the 3 versus 6 playoff matchup, who are they going to have to punch up towards to take down to start this potential second finals run? Well, it would be an old friend from last year in the Milwaukee Bucks who looks relatively the same from last year, except this time fully invested into their offense with new weapons and scoring the most points in the NBA per game at 120. Now, this could be another gift from the gods like last year, having the pieces to deal with this team defensively, but the Bucks planned around this by signing more shooters and, of course, getting rid of Eric Bledsoe for Jrue Holiday, who was seen as an offensive liability in that series last year. And you could see it from the regular season where the Heat lost 2 out of 3 games that they played and even had 144 points dropped on them in one of those games. But it doesn't matter. This is the playoffs and everything changes in the playoffs. This time around though, the experts at ESPN predicted a Bucks win, and it was going to be quite the uphill battle to take down the best offensive team in the NBA with less offensive firepower compared to last year. Game 1s are always going to be a nice way for both of these teams to feel each other out, and both squads had their own interesting problems going on. Both Giannis and Jimmy Butler were getting locked up by each other's team, and by the time it was the fourth quarter, the Miami Heat were able to stay above water with a 1-point lead due to the mix of Duncan Robinson and Goran Dragic carrying the offensive load. But with a close game like this in the playoffs, especially in the Game 1 setting, you're going to get some crazy stuff happening. Skip to the final minute in the fourth quarter, and we've already seen 8 lead changes and many ties as both teams are trying to win this game. But Jimmy Butler and Giannis were still going at it with many free throw trips being taken in the final minute alone. Jimmy Butler ties the game with 57 seconds left but misses the second free throw. Giannis gets fouled by Trevor Ariza and splits the free throw trip for a 1-point lead. And after a Jimmy Butler turnover, the game can be ended by Giannis with 2 made free throws, but once again, he splits the free throw trip, still giving the Heat a chance to tie or win this game. And as usual, Jimmy Butler is going to take the chance to keep this game going and take his team to the top.
That's Dragic. Dragic lobs it into Butler. Butler with the Heat down 2, waiting. 2 seconds left. Butler for the tie. Lays it in. Jimmy buckets. Clutch time indeed.
Now remember, this was last year's DPOY guarding him, and Jimmy Butler made the game time layup look too easy as Giannis tried not to foul him for the easy bucket. So you know what that means, overtime. But in this period, Jimmy Butler will once again come down to earth, going 0 of 3 in that time period and seeing his team lose a close and tough game, 109-107. While this game was close and showed a lot to be desired defensively from the Heat, that would be short-lived as the Bucks got all the info they wanted for this series, and the Miami Heat got fried from this point on. Game 2 would show once again the Heat's offense can't keep up with the Bucks as they blew out the Heat 132-98 due to 22 made threes from the Bucks, with most of them coming off of their bench, and also seeing Jimmy Butler only score 10 measly points. Game 3 was dominated the same way with more struggles from the Heat offensively, and the Bucks rolling to a damn near 30-point win, and down 3-0 with the season on the line, the Bucks wouldn't waste time. Bryn Forbes, Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton, and Giannis would all score over 20 points in a huge win, 120-103, to win this series in a very much shocking sweep, making the Heat look like nothing. What the hell happened here? Some would argue there are many reasons. Jimmy Butler had a horrible series, only scoring 14 points per game while shooting 29% from the field and 27% from 3, and infamously getting outscored by a role player in Bryn Forbes that series. The Bucks were on fire all series from 3, and most importantly, the Heat altogether were just not the same as last year. They were good defensively this year and were below average on offense, and their defense was being torched from the perimeter while their offense basically staying the same. Or if you're a real critic, all of this laid on the hands of Jimmy Butler, who got shut down the entire series. If you're optimistic, you might give the Heat a little bit of mercy due to their small break after their finals appearance, and even the Lakers suffered a similar fate themselves. But no matter how you look at this season was a failure, and you need to change something. Despite the way it happened, the Bucks would win the championship due to their tiny change to the roster, while the Heat are still trying to figure it out. There's still a light at the end of the tunnel though, because the Heat are about to get out of $39 million in cap with Victor's deal ending and the fate of Goran Dragic being up in the air. Despite how the season ended, things can get much better in the summer, and it may have ended on a sour note, but with so much money on the table and assets that can be moved, we can see a brand new team coming into next year. Will it happen though? Well, I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. A weird season turned even weirder is now done. However, due to the way last year ended, there was a lot banking on this upcoming season. It's going to prove one or two things. Are the Miami Heat legit, or was the infamous first season with Jimmy Butler a fluke and the Heat are just going to stay mediocre no matter what? Well, this summer will need a real turning point in some way, whether it's a big trade, a big signing, or some massive development from the team. And it starts in the free agency period. With the likes of Victor Oladipo's $20 million now off the table, there opens up a lot for the Heat to do in the aspect of signing or trading for someone big. And Pat Riley would go on and make another move to immediately give the Heat a nice little upgrade. On August 6, 2021, the Miami Heat would trade Precious Achiuwa and Goran Dragic to the Toronto Raptors for Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry, at the ripe basketball age of 35, is now looking to win something now, and the Raptors are going into a new era. But at the same time, he wants a new deal, and the Heat were willing to be suitors to solve both issues. So with Goran's and Victor's money off the table, Kyle is traded to the Heat on a 3-year, $85 million deal, a large amount for someone you got to stick up with until he's 38. But this is a match made in heaven with two very hard-nosed NBA players leading a team, and many can see this going a long way, especially as Kyle Lowry has kept himself in great shape to extend his career a few more years. Now, is this contract an overpay? Most definitely, but if a championship comes out of it, then who the hell cares? But the paydays don't end there. Duncan Robinson is now a free agent, and a very sought after one at that, being one of the best shooters in the NBA. So the Heat went ahead and locked him down for 5 years and $90 million. And just go on and add to the Heat culture they had going in Miami. They would sign another veteran in PJ Tucker to a 2-year, $14 million deal. And in the contracts of former two-way players in Gabe Vincent and Matt Strus turning into standard deals, while Victor Oladipo would get another small one so he can heal and potentially make a NBA comeback. The Miami Heat are good and paid out, seeing this summer as a complete buy-in for a championship. Adding the likes of Kyle Lowry and PJ Tucker adds in more defense and high IQ basketball to a team who already excels at that, and maintaining their solid core just put the Heat back in the driver's seat of the East as long as things go right. Jimmy will continue to be a great leader, Bam and Tyler will continue to grow as players, and the squad overall, despite being very underweighted names-wise, will go on to be one of the most effective teams in the Eastern Conference. Now, do they receive the respect of the media though? Well, they said they'd be a fringe 50-win team and even gave them props saying that they own 4 top 100 NBA players. But the media would just have to sit back and watch at just how the Miami Heat will bounce back from last year's blunder after a full offseason of restoration.
Crowdy spotting that. The eyes of a point guard. 4 on the shot clock. Butler down the lane. Got it! Oh, what a shot by Jimmy Butler to put the Heat up by 4. Got it! Jimmy Butler ties the game at 1:13 with 5 on the shot clock. 2 to shoot. Hero unloads. Got it! An amazing shot by Tyler Hero to give the Heat a 2-point lead. 7 on the shot clock. Hero lets it fly. Kaboom! Miami leads for the first time since it was 12-11.
It's safe to say that the 2020 bubble season wasn't a fluke in the slightest. Finally, after a full off-season of rest, newly added talent, and some progression from the young players, the Miami Heat are a well-oiled machine. By the All-Star break, they were 38-21 and tied for the first seed in the Eastern Conference, with their top 10 offense and defense once again making their summer moves that much more valid. Kyle Lowry is playing his role on both sides and is top 10 in assists per game. Duncan Robinson is once again top 10 in threes made in the league, and the Heat now own 3 people who average 19 points or more per game. Bam Adebayo continues to take on more offensive responsibility on the team, and of course with more ball handlers, benefits more on the pick and rolls with a lot more lobs coming his way. Jimmy Butler continues to lead the team while not doing too much, just being a solid rock any NBA team could use to come through whenever the team needs him, but also knows his team is talented enough to where he doesn't have to score 25 points per game for his team to win. But the true surprise to the team right now is the fact that Tyler Hero is a complete flamethrower for the team, being featured featured as the sixth man, yet averaging 20 points per game and even making nearly 40% of his three-pointer shot. And due to this play, he is far and ahead the top leader for the Sixth Man of the Year race this year, even though he is definitely playing quality starter minutes. But we don't talk about that here. But the surprises don't end there, because this year was also highlighted by the way the Miami Heat would find gems in the G League and turn them into great role players. We already saw it with Duncan Robinson, but now they added on the likes of Gabe Vincent and Max Strus, who are both absolute shooters off the bench, who are now replacing Kendrick Nunn, who went to LA, as another shooter and scorer. And if two wasn't enough, how about a third with Caleb Martin, who came from Charlotte to Miami and is the instant two-way success for the Heat, making them that much stronger. So on this team, we got top-end talent, great depth, and even worse, backup to that depth. That sounds like a championship contender to me, even if they don't own a superstar. But they do own an all-star, with Jimmy Butler being brought in as a reserve. And as the season continues, the Eastern Conference continues to solidify itself more. With a 15-8 end to the season, the Miami Heat would end with a 53-29 record and the first seed in the entire conference. A huge achievement, and now making them the team with a target on their back and be hunted rather than having to be the hunters. But there are other teams who are around their strength, with 3 other 51 teams in the conference, and they can obviously make it back to the finals though, but we're just gonna have to wait and see just who they'll have to meet in these playoffs. But in the first round though, everybody knew there wasn't about to be that much trouble, as their first ever opponents for this potential finals run, would be the Atlanta Hawks. But before that though, we do have to celebrate the fact that while Jimmy Butler wasn't an all-NBA player, they do own the Sixth Man of the Year in a near unanimous fashion, and for good reason, in Tyler Hero. But as we all know, the main hardware every playoff team wants is the Larry O'Brien Trophy, and the Heat have earned the easiest routes to the finals due to their regular season play. Once again, we start off this journey against the 8th seeded Atlanta Hawks led by Trae Young, but anyone knew this series was going to be a wash, as the main strategy was to make Trae Young's life a living hell and make his teammates beat you, especially if you shut down his playmaking. Games 1 and 2 would immediately show this series is going to be very easy, with a 24-point win in Game 1, as Trae Young would 1 of 12 from the field and turn over the ball 6 times, and Game 2 would see a return of playoff Jimmy Butler, as he'd score 45 points and winning the game by 10 points. But as usual, there will always be a slip-up in the series where you have to win 4 times, and Trae Young would give his fans in Atlanta something to cheer about, despite the overwhelming odds.
Shot clock down to 3. Butler gets it back with 2. Butler with 1. Long 2 is up and short. Rebound Bogdanovich. 10 seconds to go. Atlanta has a timeout. Will they use it? No. Here's Young on the drive. Floater up and good. Atlanta takes a 1-point lead.
But even with that tiny mishap, they go right back to business, locking him down for only 9 points in Game 3, while Jimmy Butler went on for another 36 points, blowing out the Hawks 110-86. And with Game 5 ending a ruined comeback from the Hawks, the Miami Heat would make easy work of the young team in a 4-1 series win, where the Heat looked exactly as they should. Trae Young would only average 15 points while shooting barely over 30% from the field, while Jimmy Butler looked like a superstar, averaging over 30 points per game. But everyone knew this was going to be a wash of a series. It wasn't, it was NBA TV quality basketball. The potential real first threat of this playoff run comes in the second round against the Philadelphia 76ers, featuring the runner-up MVP Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and their newly acquired point guard, James Harden. Talent-wise, you can argue that their big three is enough to take them down, but if there is one thing we know about their top players, he hasn't made the conference finals in his career, and there is a clear reason for it. The Heat can call themselves fortunate that this is their second round matchup of that alone, especially considering that Embiid would be missing for the first few games of the series due to an injury in their Raptors series. But the Heat would have their own key injury in Kyle Lowry, who suffered a hamstring injury. Despite that, there would still be a lot of advantages to take advantage of in this very fortunate situation. Games 1 and 2 without Embiid would serve as a nice handicap for the Heat, winning both of them with barely any issues, with Tyler Hero starting off the bench with 25 points alongside 24 from Jimmy Butler, and Game 2 seeing an offensive masterclass from the team, with 4 players scoring over 18 points, with a surprise being Victor Oladipo, who's finally healthy and being a huge boost on both ends. But as Embiid returns to the lineup, we finally have an even series, as Game 3 would see everyone not named Jimmy Butler get locked up, as the Heat would only score 79 points and lose by 20. And game 4, despite an amazing 40-point game from Jimmy Butler, the Heat would still lose by 8 due to another great performance from the 76ers, evening things up 2-2. The addition of Joel Embiid makes things even that much more interesting when it comes to playing defense for the Heat, especially when you have to deal with one of the best two-man games in the league with Joel Embiid and James Harden. But back in Miami, 7 players would score over 10 points or more with an 88-61 lead going into the 4th, and the Heat would have this game settled, winning 120-85 and putting the 76ers back against the wall in Philadelphia. But what happens when you put Joel Embiid in a series clinching situation? Well, you should already know the answer to that. With the power of a top defense and the usual Embiid playoff drop-off, he'd go 7 of 24 and only scored 20 points. And for extra measure, Tyrese Maxey would also struggle, going 9 of 22 at the same time. And with the key games from Jimmy Butler and Max Strus, the Heat would win 99-90, and the Heat are barely having any troubles getting very fortunate in their first 2 playoff matchups. But of course, that's one of the benefits of being the 1 seed, and also a very big benefit of playing in the Eastern Conference. So yeah, a lot of people are going to complain either way. This is business as usual for the usual 1 seed in any conference, especially when this is the Eastern Conference we're talking about. But as they stop the Hawks and make relatively easy work of the 76ers, their last roadblock, their official rivals in the playoffs, the Boston Celtics, the #1 defense in the NBA, and again being headlined by all-star Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, DPOY Marcus Smart, we don't talk about that, and their new acquisition of Derek White and Al Horford. Just like them, they are buying into their core and going after a championship. And after their heartbreaking season last year, this is truly a revenge season for them, just like it is for the Miami Heat. So now with both of these teams trying to redeem themselves, they meet in the conference finals for the same exact goal: take down the other team and win the NBA Finals. But the experts seeing the Celtics winning this series in a 16-4 vote for the Celtics, and it makes sense with the Celtics having more front-end talent to beat you. But it's not like the Heat don't have a game plan to handle this very talented team, as they love to break teams down defensively. And as expected, this series was going to be one of the best of the postseason. Game 1 would be a great way to show what type of intensity Jimmy Butler would come to the series with, scoring a game-high 41 points and exploding for 17 of those in the 3rd quarter. Then the Celtics would bounce back with 6 double-digit scores in Game 2. Game 3 would be dominated by the Heat keeping the lead from the very beginning, and it stemmed from Bam Adebayo scoring 30 points, and of course fending off a 40-point career playoff high from Jaylen Brown. And to tie up the series, the Celtics would lock up the Heat starters for only 18 total points as they crushed the Heat 102-82 for a 2-2 series tie. Now, here's the thing: no one can make up any momentum in this series, and it's truly anyone's to win from these two teams. There's always something new happening, and obviously it makes for great basketball for the fans watching, but for the locker rooms, you can imagine it is stress-filled to the absolute brim. Game 5 will be the most important game of this series so far, and both teams will play accordingly. That was until Jimmy Butler went 4 of 18 and would see his team lose in a brutal fashion, 80-92, seeing no one helping in the scoring effort. But as Jimmy Butler would make up for that horrible performance tenfold with a 47-point masterclass in winning 111-103, we have the best thing in the NBA playoffs: Game 7 between the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference, and of course with the chance to make the NBA Finals. Does Jimmy Butler have one more great performance left in him, or will the Jays take over the game once more with their absolute killer offensive depth? Well, with the first quarter score of 32-17, the Miami Heat are going to have a long way back to go on and win this game throughout the rest of the game to get to their second finals in 3 years. Jimmy Butler would go ahead and take that challenge, going a perfect 5 of 5 from the field and making 7 free throws for 18 second quarter points, but it was only good enough to push the deficit down to 6. And as halftime ended and back after a break, the Celtics didn't allow them to pop their bubble for the longest time. There was hope though. Skip to the final minute of the game, Jaylen Brown will make a very crucial offensive foul that would give the Miami Heat the ball down 5, and with a Max Strus fading 3 over Al Horford, the Miami Heat's dreams of a comeback is very much alive. And as Marcus Smart fails to draw a foul on Bam Adebayo on a drive-in, the dream stays alive as the rebound goes to Jimmy Butler to once again dictate how this series goes.
Butler, Heat can tie for the lead. Loose and Horford.
And quite literally the ballsiest thing I have ever seen live, Jimmy Butler was going to go for the win no matter what. They only needed a 2 for overtime, but Jimmy Butler wasn't exactly the best shooter all series from beyond the arc, and overall, a lot of people just couldn't agree with the final decision that he made, pulling up from the 3-point line and missing at the front of the rim, because that decision would end the game due to Marcus Smart making both his free throws, and of course ending the series 196 as they lose to their conference rivals. So what exactly do we make from this? Well, for one, Jimmy Butler deserves to be in a basketball equivalent of a psych ward, because he'd say in a future interview that he would do the exact same thing if given the chance. But at the same time, he with full confidence says next year we will have enough and we're going to be right back in the same situation and we're going to get it done. And honestly, I totally believe that. The Heat will bring back literally everybody on their roster except a few players needing small deals. So as long as some natural progression happens or nothing crazy happens, the Heat will be back competing for the NBA Finals. Would a move or two be nice to actually have some star power for playoff moments like that? Yes, but if what they are doing works, then I can see why minimal changes are happening as of now. So will next year be a repeat of last, but this time representing the Eastern Conference in the finals? Hopefully so. But as we all know, it would be done in the most unconventional, the most Jimmy Butler way possible. One major decision dictated the end of the Heat and Celtics series, and Jimmy Butler, as a way to go on and punch his ticket back to the same position, says they'll be back to finally make the finals again, no matter who the opponent is. By this point in the timeline, you have no choice but to believe him, but this roster will be the same with almost all of the team returning back, and after claiming the first seed in the East last year, it's almost safe to assume that they'll do the same thing, if not at least be in the top 3. But the common criticisms will stay the same from all over. The Heat cannot truly be taken seriously to get a championship until someone on the Heat becomes a reliable and consistent superstar level talent, or the Heat acquire one themselves. And while Jimmy has his moments where he goes crazy, you can even argue he's at that level now, but time and time again, they just couldn't get it done. So what needs to change? Well, it's obvious. Give Jimmy a running mate. 3 seasons so far, and the Heat can't even say that Jimmy has a true second option and someone he can truly rely upon. Yes, the Heat are a great team altogether, but we've seen pieces fall apart and tear down the entire foundation and ends up leaving the team going back home. It's time to give Jimmy a teammate that is equal or better to him, or the Heat will have to get lucky and hope they can finally take that leap over the Eastern Conference once again and beat the team representing the West in the finals. And guess what? As expected, the Heat stayed quiet in the offseason once again. Rudy Gobert to the Timberwolves, Jeremy Grant to the Trailblazers, Boston getting even better with Malcolm Brogdon, and even the Cavaliers getting Donovan Mitchell. Teams all over are making moves to make that jump in one way or another, and even the Celtics are getting another great piece who will end up winning the 6th Man of the Year award later this season. Spoilers, by the way, my bad. But you understand why I'm mentioning it. Pat Riley may have made a great and solid all-around team for the Heat, but the NBA are historically ruled by superstar duos, and rarely are championships won by one person leading a team all the way. Unless you're gonna press a team like the 2004 Pistons, the way he makes his teams just isn't cut in this era. Unless you're a certain someone, but we'll get back to that later. Anyways, the Heat are trying to run it back. Everyone's back and healthy. Tyler Hero is a starter and hoping to get more production after his 6th Man of the Year campaign. Bam Adebayo continues to show more qualities of his versatile game. And of course, Jimmy Butler is Jimmy Butler, and he is ready for some sweet, sweet revenge. Will the Miami Heat rise to the occasion again and fulfill the promise Jimmy Butler made last season? Well, the Miami Heat will somehow drop off the face of the planet in one of the weirdest one-season turnarounds I've ever seen. With the lowest scoring average, slowest pace, and one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the NBA, your Miami Heat have reverted to a middle-of-the-road team somehow, some way. Despite only losing PJ Tucker in free agency, the Heat somehow cannot put the ball in the basket, but due to them being in the Eastern Conference, they are staying somewhat above water. And this is with them being a bottom 10 team when it comes to guarding the three, and even worse, being the second worst defense from two-point range, allowing 57% of shots to fall in from that range. Statistically, they are one of the weirdest teams in the NBA this season, even owning a damn near 0.0 net rating, as they had to rely on many clutch moments to get these wins. And of course, it's all led by one certain individual.
Defending the inbounds thrower. The lob for Butler, he did it! Jimmy Butler put it in with 0.3 of a second left. Lowry looking, finds Butler with three. Butler forces one up.
He made it! 2-point game. Butler goes down on the block, and Butler scores! And one!
With 9. Booker. Blocked by Butler! Taken back by Booker. 3 seconds left for the win! He missed it! Miami holds on! In the hands of Butler. Jimmy Butler tonight with 30 points, a season high. Look at him go! Yeah, baby! Jimmy Butler!
Instead of just having isolate.
Butler drives on Horford to the paint with 3 on the shot clock. He's got to force one up and make it with 5 seconds left in the game.
I want you to know right now, there are plenty of more clutch moments that he had that year, because Jimmy Butler was once again showing that he will do any and everything he can to take this team to victory, being the clutchest player of this season. Even though he was the runner-up for the actual award, but who cares? No one even thinks about that thing. But despite the trio of Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler all averaging 20 points per game, the Heat are going to the All-Star break 32-25, which sure, they are above 500, but in the aspect of them doing nothing at the trade deadline and their drop-off on offense, you can officially consider them to not be threats in the Eastern Conference anymore. And if you see something isn't working, why not change it up? So many great players have been raised in this Heat franchise during the time of this timeline, yet moves rarely happen. You can give up a few depth pieces for a better player, but unfortunately with Pat Riley though, outside of a few key moments, he has never been known to do that. He was able to get Shaq, which gave them a chip in 06. He lucked into LeBron and Chris Bosh, and lastly was able to get Jimmy for very little. But why not give Jimmy a running mate as he got older, like he did for D-Wade in 06, and of course, getting 3 all-time players on the same team in the 2010s. Who knows, man? And of course, Bam Adebayo made the All-Star game this year as he continues to become one of the best defensive threats in the NBA and further expanding his offensive game. But for the team all around, are the Miami Heat going to magically find the movie magic where they figure it all out and things go right back to normal? Not at all. With a 12-11 end to the season, the inconsistencies continue to the end, furthering people's concerns about this core and making the eventual outcome of this team very predictable as they end the season as the 7th seed in the East. So is there much to learn here from this season? Absolutely. The Heat are desperately needing to think about how to improve this team next season, as Jimmy Butler is about to approach his mid-30s, and even more concerning, his contract will end in a few seasons. Are the Heat going to continue with this core, or will a shakeup finally happen? Because no one in the organization can be satisfied at this current state. But it's still playoff time, and they still need to see who they're facing off in the play-in game, which will be the 8th-seeded Atlanta Hawks. So either they're going to have a rematch against the Bucks with Giannis, or have a first-round meeting against the Celtics, who only got better from last season, or in the worst-case scenario, lose both play-in games and not make the playoffs at all. And it was sure looking to start that way against the Hawks in the 7 versus 8 game. The Heat allowed 53 points off the bench from the Hawks alongside a 25-point outing for Trae Young to drop the first play-in game to now risk their postseason hopes. But against an under 500 Bulls team, the Heat weren't about to lose that to be the 8th seed, as they now stealed away from the Bulls with Jimmy Butler and Max Strus combining for 62 points and won the game by 11. And their reward for winning this game is a meeting against the same team who smacked them a few few years ago, the Milwaukee Bucks, who was once again steamrolling the East with Giannis at the helm. Is there any hope for the Heat in the series with an 8-versus-1 matchup? No way in hell. The struggles of the Heat have been on blast all year, as with one of the worst offenses taking on one of the best defenses, it is only going to be horrible. It'll take an act of God himself to change the fate of this series, but unfortunately, that act of God looked more like a Haitian from Miami putting a curse on a very specific player.
Antetokounmpo takes it right down and drives into Love. And Giannis is hurt. The full force on the lower back.
Well, they called this a block on Giannis at the other end. And I thought that was an offensive foul. They called this a block on Kevin Love. I thought that was a charge as well.
Kevin Love, known as one of the best charge magnets in the league in his career, and a very late season signing for the Heat, potentially just saved the Heat season. And yes, while it is messed up for me to mention that, it is also unfortunately very true. Jimmy Butler is already starting off the first quarter leading the Heat with a 12-point lead, but now with Giannis out of the game, this is exactly a situation that can spark the perfect storm of another playoff run against the very top-heavy Milwaukee Bucks. And whether this was inspired by Giannis's injury or with the surging momentum from the game so far, the Heat never look back. 35 points from Jimmy, 22 from Bam, 18 from K-Love, and 15 from Caleb Martin. The Miami Heat have blown out the Bucks for a 130-117 win and might actually be flirting with the opportunity to be the 6th ever 8th seed to ever take down a 1 seed in NBA history. And it will only be that much easier with Giannis out the picture and forcing someone else to step up in such a short notice. They split the next 2 games, giving the Heat a 2-1 lead, as game 2 was dominated by 7 players scoring over double figures from Milwaukee, but obviously that won't be the standard. But what is the standard is Jimmy Butler taking the advantage of a lifetime of the situation, scoring 30 and making all 4 of his threes, winning game 3, 121-99. With their best player out of the series and Jimmy making absolute child play of Drew Holiday defensively, this might be the easiest display we have ever seen an 8th seed take down a 1 seed. And obviously the context may be in the Heat's favor, but all things considering, in the NBA playoffs, you have to take who you can get and play who is in front of you. But with a very pivotal game 4 now here, Giannis returns to the lineup, and it's time to see if those 2 wins are enough to fend off the Milwaukee Bucks. And the result of the game so far going into the 4th was exactly what some people thought this series was going to be originally. 92-78, the Bucks are looking great again. Giannis is dominant, and the defense with him on the court is oppressive. And despite Jimmy Butler's 35 points in 3 quarters, the usual stays the usual, as Jimmy is without help in a very important game. So when Jimmy can't get help from his teammates, looks like the only option left is for him to do it all on his own.
Butler with 35, sizing him up, begins the acceleration, and gets on the doorstep for 2 more. Lowry to Butler, and Butler pulls up over Holiday. Shot clock at 9, Middleton with Butler driving right into it. It's loose! The lead! Jimmy Butler!
And Giannis was trying to call timeout.
44, big one.
Death, taxes, and Jimmy Butler stepping up when his team needs it, stripping the lead down, and now taking it back. And they continued that momentum from that run and win the game 119-114 off of Jimmy Butler's career high 56 points and 21 fourth quarter points to win his team the game. And this was a game where no other teammate on his team scored more than 15 points, making this a total one-man show and an all-time carry job. Now, with the infamous 3-1 lead, the Miami Heat now have to finish the job and not allow the Bucks to storm their way back to a game 7. And both teams knew it. Fast forward to the 4th quarter, it's the same deal once again. Another huge deficit from the Heat, losing by 16, this time as the Bucks are once again clicking again on all cylinders. But just like last time, the Heat are starting to chip at the lead once again, led by Jimmy Butler doing all he can to will his team to something special. But as the Heat keep trying to tie the game, the Bucks find a way to take it back, and with 10 seconds left in the game, a Gabe Vincent 3 goes through. The Heat still need a miracle to happen, as it is time for the infamous free throw game, and the lucky contestant that ends up coming up is Jrue Holiday to potentially seal this game away. But as he misses the first free throw, the chance for overtime is right there for the Heat to take, and Jrue makes the second to make it a 2-point game now. And there are either three things that can happen here. Either someone makes a three to end this series, someone makes a two and we have overtime, or someone misses and we move on to game 6. And while I keep saying someone, we know exactly who that someone will be to decide the fate of this game and this series.
Over the top to Butler, up and in! Jimmy Butler! What's going on is Jimmy Butler. And overtime in game 5.
They didn't even need to do what they did, but somehow, some way, leave it to Jimmy Butler to turn a disastrous situation into a positive one, making the miraculous bucket off the inbound to send this game into overtime. And due to the misses from the free throw line from Giannis and Jimmy Butler's teammates coming through, the Miami Heat have done the near impossible, becoming the 6th ever 8th seed to take down a 1 seed. And honestly, with the way they are playing through Jimmy Butler, who averaged 37 points against the Bucks, this might be the best 8th seed in NBA history. So they take down the best team in the East. Obviously, it won't get as hard as that unless they face the Boston Celtics in the rematch in the conference finals. So you can argue they get something easier in the second round against the 5th seeded New York Knicks, headlined by their signing in the summer Jalen Brunson and, of course, Julius Randle. But despite their AC placement, they are making easy work of the Knicks, as some people expected, starting the series off with a 3-1 series lead and winning all those games in comfortable fashion. Despite their regular season performances, we now have to remember this squad last year with damn near the same roster, were the 1 seed last year, and they are showing why against the Knicks with clutch moments, making the Knicks turn over the ball like crazy, and so many contributions from 5 other players not named Jimmy Butler, scoring over 10 points or more per game in this series. But just like the Bucks, they can't blow a 3-1 lead. They have to end this series ASAP. They didn't do so in game 5 as Brunson scores a series high 38 to give the Knicks enough juice to win 112-103. But now back in Miami for game 6, the Heat are back home to try and end this series in front of their fans. With a close back and forth game the entire way, we are seeing something new as Jimmy Butler is actually having a bad game while Jalen Brunson is torching the Heat to bring this one to a game 7 with 28 going into the 4th. But despite the performance from Jimmy, the Heat never dropped their lead the entire 4th quarter and won the game 96-92. A lot of people saw this coming as the Heat gave everyone watching the biggest fake out while being an 8th seed in the conference finals, but the real test is finally here, and Jimmy Butler can officially back up what he said last year, as the Boston Celtics are the final Eastern Conference team waiting for them to take the opportunity to make it to the 2023 NBA Finals. Despite what they've done so far, though, they are still playing against the odds. Tyler Hero is out for the rest of the playoffs. The Celtics are top 3 in offense and defense, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are playing at an elite level and are battle-tested already against this team. So tell me, why does the Miami Heat have a 3-0 series lead on the Boston Celtics? I couldn't believe it when I saw it. You couldn't believe it when you saw it. No one believed this was real when they watched it. Game 1 was dominated by Jimmy Butler's 35 points and the rest of the team making 14 threes, winning 123-116. Game 2 was a 10-point 4th quarter comeback where Jimmy Bam and Duncan Robinson all combined for 25 points. And who else but Jimmy Butler to make 2 straight buckets to take the lead, and the Heat never looked back, winning 111-105. And game 3 was another flash from last year, making 19 threes and creating a boogeyman for the Celtics and Caleb Martin, who made 4 himself, Gabe Vincent making 6, and Duncan making 5 threes himself. Again, no one saw this type of play from the Heat at all by any means, but the Heat still have to finish the job and make it to their 2nd finals in 4 years. But suddenly, like clockwork for some reason, the Heat reverted back to their regular season form. 8 of 32 from 3 in game 4, losing 99-116, and game 5 seeing the Heat turn over the ball 16 times and allowing 4 Celtics players to score 20 points or more. Now, no team ever, and I mean ever, in NBA history has ever come back 0-3, but the Heat are now in real danger to give that up, lose to the Celtics, and despite their 8th seed label, embarrass themselves in one of the worst ways in NBA history. Game 6 is a must-win game, because a game 7 at the TD Garden is not a place you want to play in with all the momentum. With 3 straight wins, going to Boston. However, Game 6 started off as a game dominated by the Celtics. 25 first half points from Tatum and 11 more from Brown creates what will possibly be a long night for the Heat. But slowly throughout the second half, the Heat would continue to stay in the game and create some momentum, going down only by 5 to the fourth quarter. And you already know who wants all the action in the fourth quarter of a close game: the runner-up of the Clutch Player of the Year award, Jimmy Butler. With 12 points from him and 10 from Duncan Robinson, they are doing all they can to finally squeak out this win and make it back to the NBA Finals. But the Celtics already have a way to respond and keep their lead every single time. But as Marcus Smart splits his free throw trip with only 16 seconds left, there is still a way to continue this series further, with the Heat only down 2. And do I even need to say who will dictate a Game 7 or a trip to the NBA Finals?
Scored 10 of the last 12 points for Miami. Defended by Horford. Butler drives, foul. Horford will pick it up.
Well, there's a lot to unpack here on this play by Jimmy Butler. Certainly there's contact in the foul by Al Horford. It was called a 2 on the floor, but look at the feet of Butler. Clearly, in my opinion, he's behind the three-point line. This should be free throws.
Butler is also behind the three-point line at the time of the foul.
I think it's time to all come together again and send Jimmy Butler to an insane asylum officially, as once again, with the series nearly on the line, he wants to end the game outright with a three-pointer. But luckily for him, Al Horford stumbles, fouls Jimmy, and now with 3 free throws, he can win the game. It's still 3 points on him, but you know what? As long as he isn't doing that stupid shit again. And surprising to no one, he makes all 3, and the game is as good as theirs. Miami is going to return back to the finals as the Celtics only have 3 measly seconds to get a good enough shot off and make the basket. But one thing we all love about the NBA playoffs, there are many great moments, and you're about to see one now.
White will inbound. It's off to Smart for the 7th game. No, could have been tipped in, but the buzzer sounded. The light was on. It'll be reviewed.
Have to protect the offensive rebounding.
Oh, he got rid of it.
He sure
That's a
did.
Celtic win, and we're going to Game 7.
The Celtics are going to win. There's a Game 7 back in Boston.
In a miraculous play from Derek White, he would freely run to the basket after a Marcus Smart game-winning attempt, and with no one boxing him out, he would get an open look to tip the ball in, and barely got it off to send this game back to Boston for Game 7. Kids, this is why you box out, for exactly this reason. So now 2 things can happen here. Either the Heat are the second ever 8th seed to make it to the NBA Finals, or the Celtics pull off the first ever 0-3 series comeback and embarrass the Miami Heat for a second straight season in the conference finals. But while many were hoping for an all-time great game, because remember, Jason Tatum in his last Game 7 literally broke the record for most points scored in a Game 7 with 51, we would all have to come together and have a giant annoyed groan.
Clock already at 6. With White finding Horford, and outside it goes. Tatum, 1 to fire in the lane, crashing into Vincent. And he twisted an ankle, perhaps. He did, the left one. Let's watch it again on that baseline.
He tried to Euro step around him. Vincent just a little bit late rotating over.
Yep, like a sick fucking joke, Jason Tatum would get injured in literally the first possession of the game, and due to that, most people knew how this game was going to go. 8 of 23 from Jaylen Brown with 8 turnovers and an injured Jason Tatum going 5 of 13. It was over before it even started unless a role player stepped up, but a role player who stepped up on the other side was Caleb Martin, going on and terrorizing Celtics fans one more time, scoring a near game high 26 points and 10 rebounds, becoming the official boogeyman for Celtics fans everywhere the way he stepped up in the series, averaging 19 points while shooting 60% from the field in this series. And of course, Jimmy Butler scoring a game high 28 to end this series with a 103-84 win. So yes, you know what that means. The Miami Heat, the 8th seeded Miami Heat are going to the finals once again off the efforts of Jimmy Butler and a revival of their old style from last year, finally looking competent once again. The criticisms though will remain the same, but if Jimmy can somehow pull this off in the finals, then you can say that both sides are satisfied, and it'll officially make Jimmy Butler a champion as the #1 option. But they do have one more measly test. It is not going to be LeBron and AD this time. No. It's against the best player they faced this entire playoff run, Nikola Jokic, the 2-time MVP, and the Denver Nuggets. Now, while the Miami Heat are a very unexpected team to make the finals on the East, the Nuggets themselves are a weird team to make the finals themselves historically, as one of the worst defensively rated teams to ever make it. But what they have is something special in the form of Nikola Jokic and his all-time impact on offense, but this video isn't about him. If you want to watch my video on his rise in that year's playoffs, then you can watch that video later on my channel. But with that being said, if the Miami Heat want to take down the Nuggets, they have to deal with Jokic and slow him down as much as possible. They do have Jamal Murray, who's been on a tear also and can also take over games, but if they can slow down Jokic, that's the main key to winning this championship. But that means now more than ever, Bam Adebayo will be important in this series, slowing him down, and debatably even more important, taking advantage of Jokic's one-on-one defensive skills, which teams try to pick at every single playoffs. Can the Miami Heat top the odds once again in another 1 versus 8 matchup against what some would say is the best player in the league? Game 1 starts off on a bad note for the Heat and shows that they have a very long way to go in this series. Nikola Jokic is already running his offense like a well-oiled machine, racking up 27 points and 14 assists, making the perennial DPOY candidate Bam Adebayo look like a child, while Jamal Murray is continuing his impressive playoff run with 26 points and 10 assists right now. These two dominated game 1 and not allowed the Heat to even compete for this win, taking game 1 104-93 in a very efficient game. For the Heat, sure, Bam is cooking Jokic on offense, but it always is the same issue. It's never enough without other people creating some impact for the team. And as you look at the game 1 box score, there is obviously more that is needed on offense if they're going to take down one of the best offensive engines in NBA history. Game 2 would see a very similar start with an incoming fourth quarter score of 83-75, and Jokic doing more on offense and taking over the third quarter with 18 points alone. But after an 11-2 run immediately started by Duncan Robinson in the fourth, all the momentum would be in the hands of the Heat for the first time in this series to get game 2. And with that momentum, they take over the fourth quarter with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo scoring 15 points together and tying the series 1-1. And despite the 41-point explosion from Jokic, the Heat are able to squeak out with a win in a very crucial game, and it actually caused intrigue for the series to potentially see how this goes. Because a lot of people seen this as an easy win for the Nuggets, a team who steamrolled the West, and the reward for that is an 8th seed on a Cinderella run. But as the next few games continued, that hope for a competitive NBA Finals would die out game by game. Game 3 in Miami would see Bam Adebayo put up his first bad game of the series, which caused the Heat to not even score 100 points, while the Nuggets had both Jokic and Murray earn triple doubles and combine for 66 points to take over the entire night, 109-94. And game 4 would yet see another demolition of Bam Adebayo as the Nuggets forced 7 turnovers off of him as he shot 8 of 19, while Jimmy Butler is surprisingly not having his playoff moments at the biggest stage, seeing them lose once again and weirdly enough rely on Bam Adebayo for some odd reason for the entire series, 108-95. But if you remember back at this time in history, during this finals, people started to discuss that after the Bucks series, Jimmy Butler just hasn't been looking the same. And currently in the NBA Finals, he is looking the worst he has had ever been at this stage. Now, granted, he isn't bad. He's just not what you'd expect for him to be expectation-wise, especially as his team is now down 3-1. He has had great teammate performances after the Bucks series, which created this strong team presence and carried him to the finals, especially Caleb Martin in the conference finals, who some would say was the MVP of the conference finals. But now we're suddenly relying on Bam Adebayo to take this team over the top. Yeah, the same talking points will continue to take over the narrative for the Heat no matter what they do. Jimmy Butler needs a running mate, a true running mate, someone that he and others can rely on. And this debate was shown to be at its strongest on June 12th, 2023, where Jimmy Butler in a must-win game went 5 of 18 from the field and seeing the Heat lose 94-89 in Game 5 to lose his second finals in the same way. Losing to a superior player and not having a good enough team to even compete in the first place in another series where the winner was basically predicted from the very beginning. So, again, where does this leave the Miami Heat? They still don't have enough. The opportunity to win the NBA Finals was once again in arm's reach despite the circumstances and despite not many changes. But if you want to take that last final step to the top, the final change needed to actually hold up the Larry O'Brien trophy, you either need to give Jimmy an equal level teammate or better to compete with, because Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero are not at that level, and not going about that in the most aggressive way possible would be one of the biggest failures and slap to the face to Jimmy Butler, the Heat organization, and its fans, seeing how you can make it to the finish line but yet somehow never cross it. This summer for the Heat will be a very crucial one for many different people. And if what needs to happen doesn't happen, there will be a lot of consequences on the horizon for the Miami Heat's future. The most important summer for this era for the Miami Heat is here. You've been shown time and time again that this core is strong enough to make some noise, but it just needs a little bit more juice to take it all the way. Miami Heat fans are annoyed to the highest degree at the passiveness of Pat Riley not making the one move needed to add another trophy, and I don't care if they made the finals twice, everyone knows that they do not have enough to win the entire thing. But for the first time in a long time, the Heat are literally gifted the opportunity of a lifetime to take advantage of. And anyone who is anyone would strike at the moment to get this deal done.
Kevin, speaking of off seasons, one of the biggest storylines of the NBA offseason is Damian Lillard's future. And is he going to Miami? Okay, so on Friday, Dame's on Instagram Live from a club, and the song playing in the background, Miami by Will Smith, which was not incredibly subtle. Not to be outdone, Saturday, Jimmy Butler then posts Dame's song Moneyball on his Instagram. Let the speculation begin. However, Lillard's scheduled to make over $45 million this season, and the Heat have negative $64 million in cap space.
The news of the summer. Damian Lillard is tired of the Portland Trail Blazers and wants to win elsewhere, and his preferred destination is the Miami Heat. This should be one of the easiest lobs for Pat Riley to slam down, to get a top point guard and another proven all-star on this roster who is as good as Jimmy Butler to make that necessary jump to win the NBA Finals. But there's one little problem. Financially and assets-wise, the Heat are kind of in a weird place to make a move that'll satisfy the Portland Trail Blazers without a third team involved. And if one is included, then they'll need to be satisfied also. The primary offer that was rumored all around was Damian Lillard for Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Nikola Jovic, 2 first-round picks, and 2 first-round pick swaps. Not bad in the right circumstances, but to Portland, who really has all the control here, they wanted more, because Damian could easily go somewhere else if they find the right deal. But what made things even worse for the Miami Heat is the fact that, one, the Portland Trail Blazers weren't too impressed with this trade package because Tyler Hero wouldn't fit with the team due to them already having Anthony Simons, Scoot Henderson, and Shadon Sharpe in the backcourt, and to some, the only player they take as a headliner was Bam Adebayo, an absolute no. 2, Damian Lillard's agent was doing way too much behind the scenes trying to market Damian Lillard as a player who only wanted to go to Miami, which even caused the NBA themselves to get involved to get him to stop, and Portland GM Joe Cronin did not appreciate that. And lastly, 3, due to the fact that the Heat wouldn't change their offer thinking it wouldn't matter due to Lillard's agent's meddling, other teams started getting the ear of the Blazers and were much more willing to give up more. And because of that, the Miami Heat once again fumbled the bag.
Damian Lillard is officially a member of the Milwaukee Bucks. We want to show you the details of this trade, how it came together, which players are involved. Once again, Portland is sending Damian Lillard to the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis and Dame, that is a scary thought. And then you can see the Trailblazers get a slew of players headlined by Drew Holiday. This is a 3-team deal that also sends DeAndre Ayton to the Trailblazers. The Suns, they get Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson. The details of the 3-team trade are on your screen. But
yep, the perfect storm came together that only screwed over the Heat once again. The Phoenix Suns, who wanted to get off of Ayton and reconstruct their team, the Bucks, who obviously wanted to give Giannis a running mate due to Chris Middleton's decline health-wise, and the Blazers, who get a young center, a promising center, a wing with a lot of potential, and of course, Jrue Holiday, who will be traded for even more assets. All three sides get what they wanted, and if you want another middle finger to the Miami Heat, Jrue Holiday would be soon traded to the Boston Celtics, and Kristaps Porzingis was already traded earlier in the summer, creating one of the best starting lineups in the NBA. The Miami Heat's championship window is officially closed shut, and all you can do is laugh. Max Strus is traded to Cleveland. Gabe Vincent signs with the Lakers. Tyler Hero is going to miss most of the season from his playoff injury. The foundation is falling apart, and the end is near. Unless something crazy happens within the season, Jimmy Butler is as good as gone at the end of the next season, or he's going to get paid big time to end his career in Miami, at least as retribution for his time here. But we all know that Pat Riley is one stingy ass dude that has a history of burning bridges willingly with his players. So the 2024 season is here, and you cannot be excited to be a Miami Heat fan at all. Boston got stronger, the Bucks got Dame, the young teams all had a whole summer to develop further, New York is looking to get better, and the only person you can blame is the man at the very top, because this team was given many years, and I mean many years, to try to compete, and Pat Riley has let things stay stagnant while other teams made moves to jump over them. With that being said, you wouldn't be surprised to know that going to the All-Star game, the Heat are still barely hovering above water with a 30-25 record and still owning one of the worst offenses in the league. And you want to know the deal that Pat Riley finally makes to get Miami some help after all these years? They traded Kyle Lowry and a 2027 first to Charlotte for scary Terry Rozier. This is why people consider Pat Riley to be the NBA equivalent of a shady used car salesman. He only makes trades he wins outright. But everyone knows that this move doesn't move the needle in the slightest. Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero are just not going to be the players needed to take this team any further consistently. Jimmy Butler is his usual self, and we already know why that's an issue, since he isn't good enough to do it by himself. And even worse, injuries are starting to take over the team also. Bam Adebayo will be celebrated as an all-star once again, but that is probably the only thing to be happy about as a fan. And there are some surprises on the team for the future, like the rookie Jaime Jaquez Jr. and the second-year player Nikola Jovic, but I don't need to repeat why that doesn't matter in the very immediate future unless they bring a championship. But hey, potential trade fodder. But as other teams start to get better, the Miami Heat get left behind, as for once, the East is actually all around decent in the top 8. And despite their 7-3 ending to the season, the Miami Heat finished 46-36, just ranked 8th in the Eastern Conference, a real surprise honestly. But as you look at the teams above them, all of them are either in a rebuild or retooling stage, now jumping the Miami Heat, who kept things the same from the very beginning. Now, is this going to be another fake out for them to be a low seed and take over the East in the playoffs somehow? There's a low chance, but it's never zero. In their play-in game versus the 76ers, who are on their own very interesting stage right now, they lost them in a very close game, which was clutched out by free throws from the 76ers, and also headlined by Jimmy Butler's poor 5 of 18 shooting performance during the game. But during that game, we'd see the final kill shot to this era, and yet another gut punch to Heat fans everywhere.
Touch from Maxey. Butler down the other run, stuck behind the defense. The head fake, the bank shot won't go, but a foul. And Jimmy Butler's grabbing his right knee. Butler in a lot of pain after the fake took the contact, went down.
The man who carried the Heat for so many years is finally down off of a freak accident that will not give the Heat even a chance in the playoffs for another playoff Jimmy run. Despite his injuries though, they easily handled the Bulls again in the play-in to claim the 8th seed, but their reward for that is yet again another meeting with the Boston Celtics, who own the best record in the Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown era, while the Heat are at their lowest. People know this is going to be an NBA TV level series. Every single loss in this series had the Heat score under 94 points, and they couldn't even get out of the 80s in 3 of them. And We have proven yet once again that Bam and Tyler are not stars, just complementary players to stars. And once again, how Jimmy Butler did everything right, but Pat Riley failed him. So as they lose Game 5, 118-84, with Bam and Tyler combining for 16 of 45 from the field, the future of the Miami Heat is in complete jeopardy. Jimmy Butler, now about to turn 35, is on a contract year coming up and has a player option ready to use, but he wants a new long-term deal, and honestly, there is going to be a lot of back and forth on whether Jimmy should get this deal, if he gets traded, or just who is going to falter in this endeavor. The stubborn and very stern Pat Riley, who is known to not give in to people's demands, or the man who will do anything to get out of the situation he doesn't like. No matter how this goes for the Miami Heat, they are officially declining and are probably going to be the most mid-team in the East, as they are not bad enough to tank, but not good enough to compete. These clashes of personalities are going to make for a very chaotic summer, and we're just going to have to wait and see how all this goes down in front of our very eyes. So, this is the end. Unless something drastic happens during the summer, the Miami Heat are going to be stuck in mediocrity once again. Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo aren't players who can lead a team. Jimmy Butler is aging out and wants a new deal, and there isn't too much to be excited about. And what's worse is their opponents all around are getting better and outpacing the Heat in all facets. The Celtics won the NBA championship and will have a chokehold on the East for a long time. The Pacers traded for Pascal Siakam. The Knicks are putting together a really star-starting lineup and will soon trade for Karl-Anthony Towns. And young teams like the Cavs and Magic put together playoff-worthy seasons and are bound to improve their cores. Where does that leave Miami though? Obviously in the middle of the pack. But the immediate thought was that something will be worked out and the team will be rolled back for another season of Miami Heat basketball. A promising center prospect was drafted in Kel'el Ware with the 15th pick. They signed some extra bench help in Alec Burks, but of course, this is nothing to be excited about long term, as their team contracts are basically set in stone and not much movement can happen as they are in cap space hell at the moment. But of course, one of the main headlines was Caleb Martin moving to Philly on a lesser deal instead of staying with the Heat on a reported 5-year, $65 million deal, which created another narrative about how the Heat can create talent but can never retain it, as the only person who was raised by the Heat culture and stayed is Duncan Robinson. So now more than ever, the Heat are going to be relying on their young draft pick to chip in for something halfway decent. But as expected, Jimmy Butler wants to reject his player option and just wants a new long-term contract. But as those talks and rumors began, progress got absolutely nowhere, and due to that, things got iffy for the Miami Heat. Jimmy Butler wasn't playing like himself. In fact, some could say that Jimmy Butler was playing like he was unmotivated. He gladly gave the reins to his younger budding stars in Tyler Hero and Bam to do more of the work, and the Heat, as expected by everybody, struggled. Tyler Hero was out there putting up some all-star level stats, but it didn't translate to consistent wins, and Bam Adebayo, fresh off of winning gold at the Paris Olympics, came to the team now wanting to extend his range out to the three-point line, and he was looking a whole lot worse due to it, and of course, with his new offensive responsibility. And for Jimmy Butler, well, he was coasting with his lowest scoring averages in his Heat tenure so far, and it was costing them as a team dearly. But if his play on the court was concerning, then his actions off the court caused even more concern for his future with the team.
This is our best guy right here. See that? See that? I gave you the compliment. That's what bosses do. We build you up. We don't break you down. That's it.
Yep, you know what this means. The start of the Jimmy Butler trying to force his way out of another team era starts all over again, throwing shots at Pat Riley. Pat is still very reluctant to give Jimmy a deal, and to some, his play on the court is retaliation for not getting his money. Skip to Christmas Day of 2024, and Shams himself is now reporting that Jimmy Butler wants out, and he wants to join the Phoenix Suns, who is very much willing to give him a long-term deal. However, as we all know, a deal based around Phoenix would be horrible for Miami, as they receive back Bradley Beal's compensation, and honestly, who wants Bradley Beal in his current condition? A day later, Pat Riley outright denied that rumor, but we all know that once Jimmy Butler puts his plans in motion, he is going to get what he wants, and he hasn't failed at that even one time. Of course, we all remember how this went though. Jimmy Butler reveals that he wants to find his joy again playing basketball, and he is willing to go anywhere that isn't Miami, while also saying that there isn't anything Miami can do to fix this relationship. Then this started the string of suspensions from Pat Riley, which started with a 7-game suspension for conduct detrimental to the team, then a few more games for missing a team flight, and finally indefinitely for walking out of a practice after learning that he would no longer be in the starting lineup and would come off the bench. It's over. It's absolutely over. Once that report came out, it was really open season for Jimmy Butler to get traded out of Miami, and only a few weeks later, we finally see where Jimmy Butler will continue his career and see the end of the Jimmy Butler era in Miami, Florida.
Breaking news out of the Miami Heat. Our Shams Charania reporting that Jimmy Butler is on his way to the Golden State Warriors. The deal includes sending Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Anderson, and a protected first-round pick, all to the Miami Heat.
Once again, for the 4th time, the 6-time All-Star Jimmy Butler gets the last laugh. The Golden State Warriors give Jimmy Butler a 2-year, $110 million deal to give Stephen Curry a few more years of contention as he gets older, and this fit with Jimmy Butler is perfect for how the Warriors operate, and the impact is already showing itself to be positive with a 17-4 record in games he has played with the Warriors so far. It's safe to say that Jimmy Butler got his joy back playing basketball and can enjoy a few more years of going after his first championship, one of the best point guards of all time. But on the opposite side, this is what Pat Riley deserves after so many years of not giving Jimmy Butler what he wants and not making a team good enough to win an NBA championship. Jimmy Butler gave it his all with an otherwise pretty mid roster year after year and has exceeded expectations every single season almost. 2 finals trips, 3 conference finals appearances, and yet somehow, unlike other teams, the Heat stayed the same with their roster construction for the most part, and their price for that is a trade that makes them even worse. A record of 8-17, which included a 10-game losing streak since the trade, and their future looking pretty bleak as they are about to end their season under 500 for the first time since 2019, the year before they even got Jimmy Butler, putting them right back in the same place before he even came. Tyler Hero became a first-time All-Star this year, but he isn't good enough to lead a team. Bam Adebayo is probably at his peak now and is mainly a complimentary player to another star. And while there are other great young pieces on this team, there's only 2 ways the Miami Heat future can go. Either they decide to tank and get a new young star, or they repeat the same process and trade for another star looking for a new home. And right now, things are looking towards Kevin Durant, according to reports, who the Heat even tried to trade during the trade deadline. And to be real, this roster is too good to tank, but too bad to compete. But Lord knows that KD move probably won't happen for them if the main person who failed Jimmy Butler is in charge of it all. With that being said, tell me what team or player timeline you'd like to see next, your thoughts on this video and topic, and until next time.